Hi, and welcome to another episode of You Haven't Seen What? A married couple's quest to rectify the wrongs of their partner never seeing culturally relevant movies. I'm Joelle.
And I'm Parry.
And we're married.
Yes, we are, and loving it.
Oh, wow. You added that extra part. I must have done something right this week, you guys. I must have done something right this week.
Well, you know, you shared your birthday with me this week, so.
That's right. The shared birthday.
Yep.
We're disgusting. We share a birthday, we do a podcast together, and I think we generally like each other.
For the most part, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, depending on you know, how I'm behaving each day.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
You got it. And now we're going to discuss the most somberest movie in life ever.
Yeah, I don't think...
I don't know if this is going to really rate on a comedy podcast or any type of comedy at all.
Yeah, there wasn't a lot of humor that I was coming up with during this film, although I will say one of the... some of the magic of the film was that the screenwriters, the filmmakers, were able to interject some humor into the film. There were funny moments that caught me off guard, actually.
Okay, so maybe we should back up here. So this week we're talking about Gandhi.
Some men change their times. One man changed the world for all time.
My name is Gandhi, Mohandas K. Gandhi.
The story of one man whose voice spoke out for millions.
I believe non-cooperation with evil is a duty, and that British rule of India is evil.
He was the conscience of all mankind.
Where there's injustice, I've always believed in fighting.
His greatest weapon was peace.
You must make the injustice visible.
Gandhi.
They're calling you Mahatma, great soul.
Men honored him. Women loved him. An empire feared him. A nation worshipped him. Albert Einstein said, "Generations to come will scarce believe that such a one as this, ever in flesh and blood, walked upon this earth." Gandhi, a world event.
Yes, surprisingly, not about the world's largest distributor of T-shirts and bumper stickers with inspirational sayings.
What?
Because it seems like that's what most people only know of Gandhi, is that, you know, be the change and all those things that they wear, and have generally, I think, no idea who Gandhi really was.
I mean, did you know who Gandhi really was before you watched this movie?
Not as much as I thought I did.
Okay, there you go.
Yeah.
That's fair.
I knew he was more than a T-shirt saying, but I will say I was fairly ignorant in terms of who he really was until I not only watched the film, but did some research.
Yeah. So I think that's the big thing of this, in case you haven't figured it out. Parry had never seen Gandhi before, and I have seen Gandhi, wow, probably going on about 20 times or so. And that's a lot of commitment, because it's like a 3-hour movie. It's over 3 hours, actually. So that's a pretty big commitment on my part, I guess.
Well, you have a tradition.
I do have a tradition. So every New Year's, I guess, since my very early 20s, I would watch Gandhi. And I would watch Gandhi because the first time I saw it was actually on New Year's. It was New Year's Eve going to New Year's. And for some reason, I happened to still be up and everyone else was asleep. And we rang in the New Year's and all that good stuff. But at about 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning, then Gandhi comes on. And pretty much I just continued to stay up and watch Gandhi. And I was just so floored at what an incredible person I was watching. And I didn't really have any idea about. I was just so floored that every New Year's, it really gave me a sense of renewal to go ahead and rewatch it. It gave me a humbleness. Just, you know, we always think that things are worse than they really are. And just from a historical perspective and what other people are going through and what we continue to struggle with, I mean, even in this nation and around the world, just that there are bigger things out there. And the reality is that we are a part of the world and we can still make a difference if we're one person. And there are things that we can still do and be proactive about, as well as just recognizing, you know, that we come from humble beginnings and it's sort of a humbling lesson to myself every year, and it's a reminder.
Now, do you remember what channel that it was playing on? Like, was there a certain channel
You're
that
a
was trying to
fucking
get that? No, I'm saying, were they trying to get
No.
like this message of
No, it wasn't like on
renewal
some, like-
across for New
No.
Year's?
I don't think so. I think it just was like, oh, no one's fucking gonna be watching this at like 3:00 on New Year's Day, except for me. I don't know, but what it was a really great reminder, and it's one of my traditions that I normally watch it either on New Year's Eve or New Year's Day or very shortly after. And since we've been together, I don't know that I've been doing that.
Mm-hmm.
And we did this year.
I've been bringing you down.
You have been bringing me down. And this year, we went ahead and we reinstated that tradition. And I don't know, I pretty much think that your mind was spinning the entire movie. I pretty much looked over at you and you're like, holy shit, holy shit. Like, that was sort of the expression on your face the entire time.
Well, and part of that, not only because of the story of Gandhi, but because of the power and the skill of the filmmaking that was on display. And knowing that it was made in 1982 or released in 82, but this was more like a 60s style David Lean, Lawrence of Arabia, like epic scale. And though we still saw some of those into the 80s, this one had a very old school feel to it, but it just was so subtly done. The music wasn't oppressively loud and bombastic and didn't try and, crescendo at every speech, that it was very even-handed, I felt. And so I was really enjoying, despite its length, because we see a lot of 3-hour movies, but I think a lot of people are turned off by that.
It never felt like 3 hours to me. It has never felt like 3 hours to me.
Yeah, it's very even in its telling, and the progression of the story and of the evolution of the different movements of the movement as a whole, but of the different goals that they were trying to reach along the way. And so I thought it was a really, really well-made film.
Right. Speaking of well-made, how about we go back to our structure of our podcast?
Sure.
And start off with a synopsis. Did you have one, or do you just you thought I would have one? Yeah, you thought I would have one.
Gandhi. Enough said.
No, you're so ridiculous. You're such an asshole. I go, just when you think one person can't make a difference, then comes Gandhi. And I pretty much think that sums it up fairly well. This biopic right? Biopic?
It's a biopic, yeah. For sure.
This biopic really... It gets a lot of criticism in terms of, not showing everything or just showing the great side about Gandhi. But that's what a biopic is kind of supposed to do. It's supposed to show you like, hey, this person was an important person in the world, and these were some struggles, and these are how they overcame them. And so I don't think that it's any different or any worse than trying to show somebody on, generally their better days.
Well, there's some more I'm gonna talk about that, but what I felt is that I kind of tried to do a mini crash course in the history of India of this period, and of
very mini crash course.
Yes.
I love you, but very mini crash course,
and of Gandhi's life story. And the more I studied, the more I read, the more fascinating he became, but the more human, because people have deified him. They have called him a saint, and he never referred to himself in that manner. But people have attributed a lot of things to him, but there's a lot of things they haven't talked about either. And so there's some things I'm going to get to, but what I really want to start with was how this Richard Attenborough film connects back to a film we reviewed 2 movies ago, which was A Chorus Line. And you wouldn't think that those two things would overlap.
Oh, they totally overlap because Attenborough did both.
They did, but it also...
And it's after Gandhi. So, he had to do something light and freaking frivolous.
Well, and it's the same cinematographer, and I believe it was the same editor as well. But it was the cinematographer who came to finish it out, because the first one couldn't finish because he got sick. And so it was, I know I have it here.
Oh, you need
Ronnie Taylor was the cinematographer who came to finish it out for... I don't have the other one, unfortunately, but Ronnie Taylor was the one who came to finish it out. The reason I noted him was because he also was the cinematographer for Chorus Line. But I think it was the themes of individuality as well as being part of a larger group. In a chorus line, there's a scene where Zach pulls Cassie out to show her the chorus line, and the way it's filmed, they look very robotic, and they're very lockstep in their movements, and they look like, robots just performing a routine they've been programmed to do. And he's trying to tell her, you're a star. You're not like that. You don't belong in that lot. You belong by yourself, standing separate from that as the star. And she pushes back against that and says, no, that's where I belong. That's where I want to be. And at the end of the film, all these individuals whose stories we have heard, and all these individuals who we've come to know and empathize with, they slowly disappear into a larger crowd of dancers, and showing that, often the background performers are unknown to us, their personal stories are a mystery to us, they're quickly forgotten and just remembered as a larger part of a performance, but we often remember those individuals. And it's ironic that the song that they're performing at the end is One, which is about a single person standing out. That is the final song, right?
Yes.
Yes. So it's about that single person standing out, and that connects to how Gandhi highlights the power of one individual to affect change.
That is the weakest fucking connection of my entire life. It just sounds like you wanted to get that piece into a chorus line, and you decided to fucking insert that shit into the 3-hour-long movie of Gandhi and how it parallels.
I think
Go fuck yourself. We can talk about it. That's ridiculous.
I think Attenborough has some themes that he is interested in telling.
You're ridiculous.
And he often tells stories about individuals inside these larger
ridiculous. I think he wanted to go
machines.
ahead and do something a little bit more lighthearted, and he was like, okay, sure, I'll take on this epic thing that nobody else will take on, because I just took on something epic that nobody else would take on.
Well, it took him 20 years to make Gandhi. David Lean was originally going to do it.
You're way ahead.
I know, I'm
You're
getting into
way
production
fucking
notes.
ahead. Jesus. So favorite quote.
Oh, that's a toughie.
Oh, I mean, just one, bro. Seriously, you have it. Yes, look at your sheet. Good job. Oh my God, how many notes did you take?
A lot, because it was
Jesus.
very noteworthy.
Wow.
But there were a lot of.
Honestly, I took more notes than I did in Toy Story. Just saying.
Well, yes, and we heard recently that Lasseter has been hired somewhere else to work at someone else's animation division. So
listen, to quote one of my cousins, she literally was like, couldn't you just take the money and freaking just sit down like for a while? Just be in the background, bro. You don't have to be the major head honcho of anything. Shut up, take the money, sit in the background, keep quiet.
Right.
But he's an asshole, so he can't.
He can't help himself,
All right.
and that's not a good thing.
Sorry,
but.
I'm not hijacking Gandhi with John Lasseter either. Go ahead.
Well, there was a good one in Do You Fight to Change Things or to Punish, which I liked. But, and there were just so many more that it's so difficult to narrow it down. But I think I might go with through our pain, they will see their injustice. Or through our pain, they will see their injustice.
I actually don't like that quote at all. It's like, yes, the abuser will know. Like,
well,
the abuser's not gonna know. The abuser doesn't care.
You know what? Actually, the reason that resonated to me was that if you look at the history of things in this country, like the civil rights movement, what the civil rights leaders knew, especially through television, was that the more that the oppressors were doing things like shooting at people or blasting them with fire hoses or sicking dogs in them, and when the people who were resisting or who were non-violently protesting didn't resist in any way, they didn't fight back, who looked like the true oppressor, who looked like this vicious, angry person, were the people, in this case, the white people who
killed
were,
a lot of people.
And Gandhi is okay with that. A lot of the movement was about a lot of us might have to die.
I mean, I know that a lot of it was in any civil war. There's going to be deaths and casualty. I mean, it's a war, right? So you're fighting for something but still, boy, I don't know if that's my quote. So my quote's very different. Mm-hmm. Sorry. When Margaret Burke White asks him, like, why is he going to Pakistan? And it's, the division between Pakistan and India and Hindus versus Muslims. And he goes, I'm simply going to prove to Hindus here and Muslims there that the only devils in the world are those running around in our own hearts. And that is where all our battles ought to be fought. So that hatred comes from within us. And the reality is that we need to fix ourselves before we can continue and really be part.
I like it. I just don't know if I can fit it on iTunes. So
you could put the only devils in the world are running around in our own hearts, and that is where all our battles ought to be fought.
I think we can use that piece, definitely.
Okay, that's good. Yay!
I wanted to use the one about tyrants, but I thought it was too long. But I think it's very timely, is that it's when I despair, I remember that all throughout history, the way of truth and love has always won. There have been tyrants and murderers, and for a time they seem invincible, but in the end they always fall. Think of it, always. And I thought that, especially the part about tyrants, was particularly appropriate.
It is appropriate.
But, and that when it seems hopeless, it isn't.
Right.
That they always undo themselves somehow, but sometimes you have to be a part of that push to undo them.
Right.
But in the end, they end up undoing themselves, which... The scene where there's the massacre of the people who are not pushing back, they're nonviolent, they're just cornered, and the British Army just guns them all down, row after row of men, women, and children. I think that quote fits in there, that who looks worse in that moment? Who looks like, again, like the white police and politicians and civilians that were beating up on black people when they were trying to push for civil rights? Who looked like the oppressor, truly? And I think in that scene, the British are the true oppressor. In fact, there was a quote in that was like, any moral ascendancy the West had was lost today.
Right.
And I thought that was particularly appropriate, too.
Agreed.
So, yeah, the movie is full of great quotes, and they're not just Gandhi's. There's one that John Gielgud, as one of the British, makes that says... it's only symbolic if we let it be, about the march to the sea to make salt. And it's basically saying, if we make this important, it makes what he's doing important. But if we ignore it, then it's unimportant. But it didn't work.
You couldn't ignore it because they were marching 400 miles to the sea to make salt, which was taxed by the British. And it was taxed because everything needed salt at that point. So you couldn't make it not important because they couldn't ignore it. I love how the Brits always just try to ignore shit. I'm like, you can't really ignore this shit. This shit's too big.
You mean in this movie?
In this movie, but in general, like in history. They're just like, oh yeah, you did something, boo, and then keep going.
I think what it shows is that whether we're talking in any situation like this.
Any imperialistic nature or nation.
Yeah. In any colonized, where we're talking about the colonizer, you're neither way. Eventually, when people start to push back, neither way is going to work. Ignoring it is not going to work. Fighting against it, you're going to kill a lot of people, but you're going to make a lot of martyrs, and you're going to create a whole nother generation of soldiers against you. I mean, we've certainly seen that. I think we could argue this point for days, but I would say that in Iraq and Afghanistan and places like that, we have seen this. So.
Yeah, all of the Middle East.
Yeah, where the more you kill, the more fighters you create. And remember, one man's terrorist is another man's freedom fighter. So it just depends on which side you're on and what you believe. And so Gandhi was seen as kind of a terrorist at the time.
Well, I mean, he was seen as definitely in opposition to the British government, and a lot of it actually started really, and this movie really tries to consolidate. Like 60 to 70s years worth of information into 3 hours. So just remember that. It's like a broad stroke. It's not even everything regarding the film.
No, they even say that at the beginning of the film. They have a little title card that basically says, there's no way we can tell this whole story here, and so we're just trying to capture a snapshot of the man. It's much more eloquently stated. Of course, it says, no man's life can be encompassed in one telling. There's no way to give each year its allotted weight, to include each event, each person who helped to shape a lifetime. What can be done is to be faithful in spirit to the record and try to find one's way to the heart of the man, which was from Gandhi himself, but I think they use that at the beginning to try and say, hey, we can't tell all of this.
Right. So they do hit on a lot of high and low points in the entire telling of India and Gandhi's role in making India a free nation again from British rule. And you sort of see everyone go through it. I mean, all the different leaders. And I think that's the hardest part about the entire thing is like you're really watching something go down and it's like incremental progression. And then you slide back and then it's like, okay, well, we won part of what we were asking for. And do we keep on or do we slide back? And then, in all of that, there's frustration and then there's violence. And then he fasts because he doesn't want any violence. Gandhi fasts. And then it just goes on and on and on. And you're like, how many times is this man going to fast? How many times is he going to get arrested? Mm-hmm. And you just keep watching like the brutality of the English, like just keep going and going until you really have the massacre. That was like almost 2,000 people killed. It was like 1,600 or something.
Yeah, unarmed 15, men, women, children.
Exactly, who were just, non-violent protesters.
And they weren't even protesting at that moment. No, they were just having a gathering. And
right?
they were having speeches that were part of a protest.
And they weren't disbanding, I guess, really is what it is. And basically the British troops fire into the crowd, and it's crazy to think about.
Well, with machine guns, and
right?
Constantly,
and we're directed to like fire into the thickest parts of the crowd, and you're like, does this really happen? Like, what the hell is going on? And this is all paralleling the time of before and after Hitler, and all these things are happening, and segregation is still happening, and you're just sort of like, what? And the baffleness about the entire situation, because we're ignorant to things that don't go on. We're ignorant to things that happen within our own country, let alone things that have happened in the world historically and continue to happen in the world. We're ignorant of it. We just don't do a great job of really understanding what's happening in the world around us and what has happened in the world. So I think I can say that as a general statement in comparison with other countries and nations, they know more about our own world's history than we know about theirs. So it's sort of eye-opening and shocking, and just I can't believe all these things happened.
Sometimes we're shocked to find out things about our own history, much less histories throughout the world. Although, unfortunately, the history of colonization throughout the world, and the British were huge in terms of colonizing in many places, and the results have always been very much the same, in that the places that they leave crumble quickly because of the legacy of that colonization. And I was really curious about that, what was going on here in terms of the civil war that breaks out at the end. And so I wanted to do a little more research on that and understand that a little better. And actually there was an article from the New Yorker from June 29th, 2015 called The Great Divide, The Violent Legacy of Indian Partition, which talks about the partitioning. It's actually
of India and Pakistan.
Yes,
right.
Yes,
and so it's Hindu and Muslims.
And it was a review of a book, but they talk a lot in this article about the history of that region and how when they refer to it so that we will understand it as when the Muslims first made incursions into the area, but they say by medieval Sanskrit inscriptions they don't identify them that way. It's more by linguistic and ethnic affiliation. And so what this article talks about a lot is how in that area, it was a lot of sort of cross-pollination, that a lot of these peoples just intermingled. And over time, though there were some tensions, a lot of people were really getting along in many ways. And not everyone. That, it would be a blanket statement to say that everyone got along perfectly until colonization. But what always happens when people come in to colonize, especially Westerners, the way that we tend to think is we've got to categorize everything and make everything fit into a certain block. And that's what they started to do was like, okay, you're Muslim, you're Hindu. and started to try and break the region up that way. And it's the same thing that has happened in multiple places. And over time, that started to cause a lot more friction between these groups. And as the British were getting ready to leave, as India was, people from India like Gandhi were pushing back against this, it really started to decay quickly. The British actually pulled out 10 months before they had intended to, because they saw that things were going so badly. They didn't want to have to be in the middle of the Civil War, and they wanted to get out so they could say, hey, that's not our fault. Like, we got out of there and they fell apart. That's not us. And so, again, it is far more complicated than all of this. Unfortunately, the result was horrific. When you read some of the accounts of the things that were done, it's
Right.
pretty horrific. But it's very interesting to read about and understand better, because the end of the film, things evolve and change very quickly and degenerate very quickly. And I think they did a pretty good job of helping you to understand what was going on, in that some people said he was too much on the Muslim side, and others said that he was not enough on their side. And then he was going to make, instead of having Nehru be the prime minister, he was going to have it go to Jinnah.
Right.
And Jinnah was sort of painted as a villain in this a little bit in some ways, and some people have said unfairly. In fact, there's a film just about him that I had not heard of that came out in like 98. I think it's Christopher Lee who plays Jinnah, but I'm interested to see that now and learn a little bit more about him, because apparently he's been painted in some fairly broad strokes in different works, and people have said that he doesn't get the full story, but I don't know.
I like how you stole my thunder. So maybe we should do good, bad, and ugly, because now we're just way all over the place. So let's go back to structure. Good. You're good, honey.
Well, I think I already stepped in that area earlier when I was going to say the even-handedness of the production is that it does not. It may be almost a little too complimentary and doesn't step on too many. He has one outburst of anger early in the film, and then they never come back to anything like that again. They don't really look at his shortcomings as much, and that may be not so good of the film, but I think just the even progression of it, the screenwriting, of course the acting, I would say, I mean, he so embodies the man that...
Ben Kingsley is
yes.
amazing. Just freaking amazing.
He so much becomes him that people thought it was his ghost. People in villages who saw him thought they were seeing him again, and it freaked them out a bit because he so was spot on in terms of his look and his body language, and he really hit it dead on. But I would have to say the pacing and editing, just the whole thing, really. It's hard to really break it down.
Yeah, so I said good. Overall story shows consistent growth throughout. Like, yep, it's the overall story.
Yeah.
It really is. It really was masterfully done and crafted. And the 3 hours was about right. Any longer, I think it would have been too long, and any shorter wouldn't have done it justice.
Yeah, a 4 hour would have been...
Oh, God, I would have killed myself.
It would have been, Das Gandhi Boot.
I can't. And what was your bad? What was your bad?
Well, I had to pick a bad that this is one that my father would be proud that I picked. Apparently, with the setup of trains at the time, they have Gandhi riding in the first class car, and they have it closer to the front, which, if you're thinking in terms of like, seating on buses and things like that, you'd put the first class people in the front and the lower class people in the back. But in the case of steam engines, they would put the first class cars toward the end, because you wouldn't get all the heat and smoke and everything from the locomotive. And so that was historically inaccurate.
That was your bad.
So yes, that bad was that bad is for Dad.
Oh boy. Yeah, my bad was that it was a little bit too overarching of a biopic. Maybe it showed too many good points, and it didn't really show you enough human of the human, I think that's what it's been criticized for, is that you didn't see all his quirky things that he did with his diet and weirdness, and the fact that he was celibate, other than his, couple of children, but really took a vow of celibacy afterwards. And You know, he had some weirdness happening there, but that's the big bad, I think, is that it was all good, no bad of the human.
And that's why it's been accused of being somewhat propagandistic as well, is that it...
well, yeah, sure.
And was financed, 1/3 of the financing came from India itself, yes. Yeah. So some have said that it glorifies too much.
Sure.
So...
I mean, the man did a lot of shit, though.
He did.
Just saying, you know, everyone's got some bad in them, you know, or not a nice side.
Right.
And then you're ugly?
Well, I think that's where my ugly comes in, is that it's hard because I understand what they were trying to make in terms of a film, in terms of what people are going to see and what they're going to enjoy. And, you know, Ben Kingsley has been quoted as saying, yes, there were some things about his sexuality and about his diet and all these things that he believed that were an important part, but we left them out because that's not the story we were trying to tell.
Right.
And I understand when you don't tell everything about someone, but that's where things can be accused of being a little propagandistic, is when you don't even allude to them very much. And there was one that I found that at first I thought, okay, this is someone just trying to disparage because they don't like who he was or they don't agree with everything. But then I found a lot of references to some very specific things and some of the lasting legacy of that. And a lot of it has to do with his views on sex and sexuality and birth control and things like that. And supposedly, I guess, according to the story, he left his father's deathbed because he'd been dying for a while. So he left and he went to go be with his wife. And when he came back, his father had died. And I can't prove that story, but that's what I was reading in a couple of places. And he believed more, stemming from that sex should be about procreation and not pleasure. And to experiment with that, to sort of steel himself against sexual temptation, supposedly he would sleep naked with like his grandniece and different women. And
after his wife died, FY.
Well,
yes, it is.
Well, some of the stories go quite a ways back, but would be in the bed and not having sex, but trying to test himself. But apparently the effect on a lot of the women was very detrimental, that they were really disturbed by it because he kind of pushed for it. And from again, I can't prove any of this, but from what I was reading.
I actually read that some of it wasn't detrimental, and they've said that it wasn't, and then I've seen a couple where it was. So, I mean, either way, the man liked to push limits in a very weird way, and some say he's almost self-centered to feel like he could do what he did all over the place. And right. So isn't that part of it though? Like a leader, is that sometimes you feel like you can do all of these things, and that's an inherent quality that you need within a leader, but it's also the downfall of the leader.
Right. And unfortunately, some of the views that were common at the time he reinforced. And like I said, certainly he was not the only one, but beliefs about women who were raped losing their value as human beings, and, you know, honor killings of daughters who had been raped and things like that.
Are you talking about the ugly of the movie, or are you talking about the ugly of the person? Like,
well, and that's, but I'm saying the two, it's kind of like our talk about Lassiter in that.
No, it's not. Gandhi didn't make this movie about himself.
No, but I'm saying, would he have wanted a movie made about himself, and is this the one? And what would he have wanted included and not included? And of course, you know, we don't always...
That's a whole different conversation.
You know, who lives, who dies, who tells your story. You can't always choose who...
Yes, Hamilton. Oh, Lord.
But again, it has left a legacy because he reinforced it. He may not have said it first, but he reinforced some of those. Even though he softened later in his life on some of these views,
yes,
some of the damage was done.
You're talking about the person.
I am.
Right.
I just feel like sometimes
I'm talking about the movie. What's your ugly of the movie that we didn't show, that they didn't show these parts?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, at least touch on them a little bit to balance it a bit.
Okay. That's fair.
Because I think sometimes it's hard to ignore some of that legacy and some of those things that you do, and you may have even regretted or not regretted because you continued to believe them. But it sounds like he did soften those views, because I think people do change over time.
Yeah.
And I think he did change some of his views on some of these things, but they don't. I know that that's hard to put into a 3-hour movie.
That's hard to put in a 3-hour movie. And also culturally, that's a lot of, the things that you're talking about in general, culturally, are especially like worth and the caste system and the time in which he was alive. The man died, 1948 at age 78. So the time in which he was alive and what he's seen and the world as it was and women within the world at that time and the beliefs within the world at that time, as well as, the caste system and the untouchables, his views weren't uncommon.
Right. And
I would say that. So I would, and they had to have come from somewhere else prior.
Right. It just that the fact that he reinforced
saying
them
that
has
now
stuck.
is different. Saying that now is different.
Right.
And obviously it's different just because, it's been over, holy crap. Yeah. It's been over 70 years since he's gone too.
Yeah.
So it's always going to ebb and flow and change in how we look at something now versus how it was happening at the time are always going to be two different things.
The context of the time is an important piece to consider.
Right. So
I guess the question I always ask with something like this is that I think the inspiration of the film, it is wonderfully inspiring.
You didn't ask me, my bad.
And this
is bullshit.
Well, this is connected to what we were saying, though, is that it is truly and deeply inspiring to watch. And it inspired me to want to be a better person or pursue some goals that were less selfish and more, I've worked for nonprofits and done that type of work, but it reinforced a lot of what I've done and what I do. And so when a film does that, does it justify leaving out certain unsavory details to unify people behind a common message of understanding and nonviolence, or to inspire people to be better or to push against oppressors? Is it justified to leave out those unsavory things because you're trying to create something that inspires people? And that's always the hard question, especially when it's about real people. Because, again, no one's perfect. No one is a saint. George Orwell actually wrote an article about Gandhi, and one of his things he said was saints should always be judged guilty until they're proven innocent. And it's a positive article about Gandhi, but what he's saying is, don't deify people. Don't make people saints because
you can't. Everybody has a flaw. Everybody has these layers. That's what makes a person a person. And sometimes because you've seen or done something awful, that also makes you can also see the other side of it. I don't know if that makes any sense. Well,
that's why I wanted to maybe see a little bit of that, because it would humanize him a little more. And they do that in the film. They have moments where he's very human, but maybe a little more. But again, I think overall what this film does for people in terms of, it might be a different opinion in India, in Pakistan, because it's too closely connected to them. But I think those of us outside of the country, we may just take it for the positive, inspirational, one person can make a difference. And that's not a bad thing. I think people need to research for themselves and understand their heroes a little more deeply. And that's all I'm pushing for, is maybe don't take the film as full gospel. Do a little of your own research, read some of these articles and books, and get a little more balanced understanding. Because I didn't have one, and I'm happy that I do now.
That's fair. That's very fair, I think. My bad is actually that Jinnah was really demonized as such a villain as such an obstacle, because that's not necessarily who he was. But it's also a movie. So I think that's part of it that you have to think about, is hey, there is this hero, that's Gandhi. Hey, there's a person who's trying to obstruct what Gandhi is doing, that's Jinnah. And he was probably his biggest opponent to some of his ideas, possibly. And that's why you go ahead and you then vilify sort of that person. It's not fair, because then you look at it as, oh, well, it's a Muslim going ahead and not wanting this unity, which wasn't true at all.
Right.
So you're right. That whole piece about educating yourself after you watch this movie in general, and not taking everything so literal. But, like, we don't take Aquaman literal. Like, so it's the same concept. Like,
I hate to break this to you, but
comics.
I don't think Aquaman's real.
I don't think Aquaman is real either. I don't think Wonder Woman is real either.
Although Jason Momoa is very real.
Jason Momoa is very real.
And an awesome dude.
Bardo is very real.
At least in like the 2 minutes that we got to talk to him. But
yeah, so yeah, I think in all of it, you should definitely go ahead and do your own research and dig and come away inspired and take it what you want from it. But ultimately, there's always another shade behind a person that we don't see.
And this is why not having enough media literacy in America is a crime. We need media literacy here.
Great. How deep can we get possibly now? We're going to go production notes with Parry. Hey, fun stuff. Yeah.
Fun stuff.
Oh, wait. Do I need to give the rundown?
Oh, yes, please.
Okay. Directed and produced by Richard Attenborough. It was his love child. Written by John Briley. It really was his love child. I mean, if this wasn't his love child, I don't know what was. Music by Ravi Shankar and George Fenton. Cinematography by Billy Williams and Ronnie Tyler, edited by John Bloom. The production companies of Goldcrest Films, International Film Investors, National Film Development Corporation of India, Indo-British Films, distributed by Columbia Pictures. The release dates varied. In New Delhi, it was the 30th of November, 82. Then the UK, December 3rd. And then United States at December 10th. Running time, 191 minutes. That's 3 hours and 11 minutes.
Although the intermission has been taken out in later showings
so it's
of
like
it.
188 or 180 something. Okay, big deal. The intermission's actually really good. That's my favorite part. I'm just kidding. The budget was $22 million, and the box office, all of the estimated reports total was 127, almost 128 million. Rotten Tomatoes, 85% from critics, 92% from the audience, and IMDb has a rating of 8.1 out of 10. So pretty good job, I would say.
Well, and...
and 8 Academy Awards.
Yes. Yeah, it was hugely successful. In fact, it trounced E.T., the extraterrestrial, which was out that year. And Attenborough didn't want it to. He actually wanted... Spielberg and E.T. to win. He thought they were great and he wanted them to win.
So he actually apologized to Spielberg. Did you hear that? He apologized for winning Best Director and Best Picture because he thought E.T. should have won it.
Yeah.
Now, where I don't think E.T. should have won, I actually think that Gandhi should have won is actually Best Original Score. I think, sorry, John Williams, I think Ravi Shankar and George Fenton did a better job. That's me.
I think the reason people couldn't see it is, as you and I discussed, that as we were watching the film, the music so seamlessly blended with the imagery and it formed such a perfect final result that I usually notice the music, and I didn't notice a lot of it until we listened to it separately and really understand how good a lot of it was.
I know, but those people are listening to it separately.
Yeah, it's true. It amazed me to then watch it and go, oh yeah, that was there and that was there. And the only point it really stood out, because they did such an even job of this, is that they kept the music very minimal and absent in some places where you might expect it today, that where they would really push the music, had none. And it was only when he breaks his fast much later in the film that they had the music rise a bit, and it's really effective because they didn't do that throughout the film to the point where you just ignore it. It really worked there, but I see how that happened. But I agree that it is quite amazing. Although, I don't know, John Williams can be hard to compete with, especially in those early days.
I can't. 8 Oscars, 8th highest Oscars film of all times or something. Yeah, like basically getting the most honors.
Well, you were talking about the film specifics. I found out that in 2005, the Gandhi Project was launched with a Silicon Valley entrepreneur, and they're working with Palestinian voice actors and artists to dub the film into Arabic so that they can to screen it to an even wider audience. So I thought that was really, really interesting that they're trying to dub it into more and more languages. Also, this isn't necessarily a production note, but this is something I really didn't know, was that Gandhi actually got his inspiration for nonviolence from a Henry David Thoreau essay. What was it called? Civil Disobedience. Yeah, and that he read it while in prison, and that was part of his inspiration for his work. So I thought that was fascinating. Let's see. I thought it was amazing that Ben Kingsley, who was born Krishna Banji, his paternal family was from the Indian state of Gujarat.
His father.
Gujarat?
Yes,
his father. Paternal family, I said. Which is the same state that Gandhi was from. And that I also thought it was funny that at one point Attenborough offered the role to Anthony Hopkins.
And he said no.
Well, when Hopkins told his dad, his father said, "Oh, so it's a comedy then."
Oh, no. Well, also, do you know who else was considered?
Oh, yeah.
Dustin Hoffman and John Hurt.
Hoffman apparently really wanted it, but he took Tootsie instead, and I think that was the right choice.
That's way freaking better. Way better. Way more appropriate.
Yeah, and it also has the little big man problem where he shouldn't be playing some other races. It just wouldn't work out well. So it's just not right. The funeral scene, of course, is one of the most epic in the film in terms of its size, its sheer mass of people.
Because there are 300,000 extras.
Yes. And
did you know that there were volunteers? They weren't paid?
A few were paid, but most were not.
Most were not paid.
Yeah. And it was on the 33rd anniversary of Gandhi's funeral that they shot it.
So they just wanted to actually go.
And it was 11 crews and 23,000 feet of film, and they pared it down to 2 minutes and 5 seconds in the final film.
Crazy.
So, and apparently you had to wear white, but if people showed up, they had turnstiles, and if people showed up wearing non-white clothing, they would buy the clothing from the people and give them a costume to wear so that they were all wearing white. So I thought that was really interesting and hugely expensive, and I wonder if anybody figured it out and was like, let's keep coming back with non-white clothing so we can get paid each time we come back.
You're ridiculous.
Or they, if I guess before cell phones, they couldn't call their friends and be like, dude, show up with the wrong clothes on.
Not even gonna go there.
I thought it was cool that Ben Kingsley did learn how to spin thread just as Gandhi did, but
spin cotton.
Yeah. But he apparently had real trouble acting and spinning at the same time. He really had to work on that because he kept getting distracted by spinning. Well, of course, we all know that, we talked about Spielberg and Attenborough, but we know that Attenborough later appeared in a Spielberg film, being Jurassic Park.
That's right.
Yeah, in the role of John Hammond. Because I knew he was an actor, but when you look at his credits, the man was a producer, director, actor. His talent was pretty broad and wide-ranging, and I admit I knew some of it, but not the full range. I thought it was an interesting little tidbit that when they announced the film in India, that they were going to make it, that a journalist was saying that she thought that that Gandhi should only be shown as a brilliant white light because you shouldn't even show him as a person. And Attenborough was like, no, that's not what we're going for. But he also said, I'm not making a film about bloody Tinkerbell, which perhaps was a little rude, but
oh boy.
It's been selected by the Vatican in the values category on its list of 45 great films.
Yeah, I think it's like number 34 in British top 100 films or something.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow. So, there's so many notes on the making of a film of this size, but I think that's enough to cover for now. But I think also it is important to note that, Ben Kingsley so embodied this role that I think that he kind of suffered from what a lot of people do when they so fully immerse themselves early in their career in a role, is that they have a hard time getting cast in other roles. Not that he hasn't worked, he's worked a lot, but none of the roles have been like Gandhi. But he had a couple others, like he was in Schindler's List and he was Meyer Lansky and Bugsy. But I feel like it's that same curse of like Amadeus, where F. Murray Abraham and Tom Hulce continue to work, but just never anything even close. And so you'll always have that, but it is tough, I think, for an actor to be that good in a role so early in their career, because, it's hard for you to move past that. People won't let you because they've typecast you in that type of role, or as that specific role, like Leonard Nimoy's Spock, for example.
No, it makes a lot of sense, just because I can't see him as anything else. I mean, I know I've watched it a bunch of times, but even when I see him in something else, I did the other day. What did I see him in? I don't know. He had like a small little role, and I was like, oh wait, Gandhi, and that was my knee-jerk reaction.
Was it as the in Iron Man 3?
Was it an Iron Man 3?
Because he's in that as the fake version of the Mandarin. For anyone who hasn't seen it, sorry, I gave it away. But he's an actor playing a character, and he's great in that role. But Iron Man 3 is very different than Gandhi.
Yes,
Iron Man 3 is not winning 8 Oscars.
It's not winning 8 Oscars. You're ridiculous. Yeah, so it's sort of hard. You've already won your Oscar for Best Actor. Like, what do? You keep acting, which, like I said, he's had a lot of fun roles. Like he was in Sneakers and in, is it Dave, where he plays the vice president? So Dave is where I saw it. I saw it in Dave. Thank you. I saw it in Dave. I was like, what in the hell? Thank you. It was not Iron Man 3 that I was watching. It was Dave.
And I don't think it's Ben Kingsley who plays Gandhi in UHF for Gandhi 2, The Revenge.
You're so ridiculous.
Oh, well, VHS is my birthday choice movie.
It's not
so
VHS, it's UHF. You said VHS.
Sorry, did I say VHS?
Yeah,
Holy hell.
Yes, you did. That maybe you should just want to watch it then. Sounds like an excellent idea.
It's because I was thinking of watching it on VHS.
Whatever.
UHF,
All right, anything else?
Sorry, Weird Al.
Are we wrapping this up? Wrapping up production notes. And
yes, production notes.
It's wrapped up?
Yeah. I feel like there's that's a good point to stop.
Okay, good.
A mention of Dave is always a good place to stop.
It is a good place to stop for multiple reasons. Oh, Sigourney Weaver. How the mighty fallen. Anyway. Dude, although she still kills it in Working Girl. Anyway, Working Girl was before then, though.
Maybe we need a Working Girl sequel,
Dude,
if
no.
we're getting a Top Gun sequel.
Listen, that means Harrison Ford would have to do another kissy scene, and he's so bad.
Oh, no, we're not going to get into the kissy scene badness.
Listen, if you could try to merge Chorus Line and Gandhi together, I can definitely merge Sigourney Weaver to Harrison Ford. Like this Dave, the Kingsley to Dave to Sigourney Weaver to Harrison Ford mashup.
Maybe Dave and Working Girl are connected. Maybe she changed her name and got married to the president.
Maybe. Anyway, so soundtrack smashes. Hey, so Gandhi, the score was released in 1982. You can still get it on vinyl pretty cheaply, probably about $11-12. If you're looking for like a really pristine copy, it's more like $30 to $40. And I have to say, freaking Ravi Shankar, god dang, he's amazing. He was amazing because he died. But he was really amazing. And my favorite track is number 4 on the score. And it's the Discovery of India track, just because you can just feel the anticipation. It's when Gandhi is going to India and really traveling around the country. And that's what they're showing at the time. But, one crazy thing, I mean, he died at 92 years old in 2012.
Ravi Shankar.
Yes.
Yeah. Well, because that was something I didn't know, was that Gandhi didn't know much about India.
Right. Because he was London, South Africa. Oh, Lord, really South America. South Africa, and he had left when he was young and then come back, and that's really what it was, is that he went to go to school and all that good stuff.
Yeah, sometimes it does take someone from the outside, even if that's where your roots are, to really develop a passion for a place and want to change it.
Well, they had invited him sort of back after what he did in South Africa.
Yes.
and segregation and that whole piece to come back and come back to India, and then said, hey, no, maybe you should go ahead and explore India, and then you'll understand what to talk about here. And that's really what really transpired.
Yes.
So interesting pieces. I did not know that Nora Jones is Ravi Shankar's daughter, which makes so much sense. She's extremely talented and, genetically.
That's why she has those
predisposed.
sitar solos in all of her songs.
Shut up. Shut up. So what was your favorite track on the score/soundtrack?
The one where George Harrison and Ravi Shankar do a song. No, I'm kidding. I always think of George Harrison with Ravi Shankar, even though Shankar is very much his own artist. I think because my introduction to him was through the Beatles and George Harrison that, I always start to hear the two connected. But
no. No.
The song that really captured me because we were listening to the soundtrack after, and there was
what we always do.
Yes. And in this case, because I hadn't noticed it as much in the film because I was so engrossed in what was going on, this particular song, I was like, oh, wow, listen to all the tension in this. And it's really building. And, it's making me nervous because it really is capturing the traditional sounds of music from the region, but it also has more of a modern kind of score in it. And like I said, and the tension is building and building. And you were like, oh, well, this is the massacre scene.
Right.
And so I really appreciated the way they brought those two things together, and you had the collision of the colonizers and the colonized, and there was this, this horrific scene, and the film really, or the music really captured that. Even without seeing the image, it was capturing the tension and fear in that scene.
So what's interesting is that I really appreciated the fact that we didn't have to see all. Oh, that's me. Listen, I'm in school and these discussion posts have to happen and I need reminders.
I thought that was the Parry is talking too much alarm.
What? Yeah, I mean, that's every fucking day of my life. That's every day of my entire life.
Every day. Wow.
You need to talk to other people outside. I don't understand. I come home and I'm like, I don't want to say anything. And Parry just wants to talk endlessly. Like, he comes home at about 6:30, and from 6:30, I swear to you, till about 11:30, it's like a constant tirade coming out of his mouth. And you cannot stop it. Sorry.
Really? This is a lot of dirty laundry that is being aired for the general public. I
need friends.
I would edit it out, but this part makes you look bad, so I'm going to leave that in.
Okay. I'm just saying, after a while, you do tune it out. There's a reason for that 66%.
Oh, right. Yeah.
Because it is a lot of information pouring into my brain, and my brain needs space to hold other shit.
To hold school shit. So I get that with the school shit. If it's just holding,
It does. Or we're watching something, or I'm watching something, and in the middle of the craziest scene ever, he knows that I'm watching the television. And he comes in, he's like, well, Joelle, do you know? Blah, 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 blah. And I was like, bro, why don't you tell me to pause? And then I will pause it, and then I will listen to whatever you're saying. But you come in all hot all the time, and then I am just like...
I try to only do it during, one, reality shows, and two,
No, that's bullshit. I call bullshit on that.
Worst case scenario hospital, which is any medical drama is worst case scenario hospital.
I call bullshit too.
Because it's always the worst case scenario.
Dude, you do it during Blue Bloods to me all the time. All the time. Like they're interrogating some suspect, and here comes my husband ready to tell me about some fucking insignificant thing of life. Hey, did you know that blah, 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 blah? Insert whatever bullshit here.
So I do it to Big Moral Choice Cop Show is the other one I tend to talk during.
Oh, fuck off. What else is there really right now? Like the comedy show? I mean, there's
we
not
won't
much
talk
left.
about the R. Kelly documentaries.
Oh God, I can't talk about R. Kelly.
If you haven't seen them though,
hashtag mute R. Kelly for sure.
Hashtag what?
Mute R. Kelly.
Oh yeah, don't be playing your R. Kelly songs anymore.
No, fucking no more. It shit's all about, every single song that he wrote literally is pretty much all about an encounter that he had. with somebody who was underage.
Just, you know what? Instead of buying the iTunes songs, just
listen to Admit It.
No, just look up the...
Where he basically says, like, I admit it, that I'm a sick perv. Awesome. And then you're like, okay, done.
Just look up the lyrics, just read them.
Yes, don't buy anything. Good God.
Yeah, the sales went up when all this was being revealed. And it's like, really, people? Come on.
Yeah, the streaming went up and all that other shit. And it's just like, ugh. Because they wanted to see what the lyrics were. And then also you're like, so it's very difficult, and I understand this. And they actually said it in the documentary. I have no idea how we sidetracked to here from fucking Gandhi.
Well, it connects back to the Lassiter again. It's like, can you separate the things that you've grown up loving from the creators
so
of
it's
them?
really tough because you're like, I can list off at least 10 R. Kelly songs that have some sort of significance, or I can remember a place and a time that I was whenever I heard it, or what was going on in my life at that point. And now I have to delete it all because it's literally associated. Like, he wrote those things almost as biographical pieces within his life. And now you just have to go delete, because it's not okay. None of this is okay any longer. It wasn't ever okay. Culturally, I'm totally going on a soapbox here. Fuck it. Culturally, we have pretty much said Black women, minority women do not matter. They're the most insignificant people within the world. We have said this all the time. We don't care if something happens to a Black young girl versus a white girl. Like, it just does not, a Caucasian girl. It just does not stick at all, especially an African American girl or Hispanic girl. It does not matter. Like, it's so ridiculous, and we really need, as a society and culturally, it's even in culturally in my background, we need to take off those blinders. And as a woman of color, this is bullshit. Okay, my life means just as much as any white man walking around. Okay,
just a man in general.
Everybody and anybody, like, no one's life means more than another, truthfully. And we just have to really take a look and stock at what we're reporting, how we're reporting it, what we're putting out in the media, what we're listening to, people who we're supporting, and really make a difference in the dollars that you're spending and where you're spending them and who you're spending them on. And when you can go ahead and plead ignorance for whatever, because I truthfully muted myself out of a lot of these conversations. I didn't realize all the shit was going down. I just wasn't tuned in as hardcore. But now that I know, I can't unsee it. And now we all know. So we all can't unsee this shit. And if you haven't seen Surviving R. Kelly, kudos to the documentarians who put that together, and who really, and all of the families and girls who came forward and women who came forward. Kudos to them for coming forward and sharing their story and dredging up all these painful, horrific, awful memories that they're going through right now. Kudos to them for doing it. And really all of these people with the movement, with the Me Too movement and Mute R. Kelly, and all of the celebrities who are throwing themselves behind all of this. John Legend was on there. Wendy Williams was on there, and throwing their names behind all of this and saying it is not okay, and standing up culturally and saying it's not okay. It's not okay what he's doing. It's not okay what he's been doing. It's not okay that we're accepting of this as a culture. It just is not okay for any man to be doing this. And I know musically this has been a tradition to go ahead and treat younger girls and women as, groupies and whatever, and we just consider them loose. But this is whole other level next shit that has happened. It's not just, some girl came to his room bullshit. It's like cultish frigging behavior, abusiveness, and it has been a cycle of abuse. He was abused. The person who abused him, which is his older sister, was abused as well. Like, it's a cycle of abuse that keeps on happening. And at some point, we have to stop it. Okay, I'm done off my soapbox. Sorry.
Well, I think what I just need to add on that is, don't be sorry, is what we also need to remember. So as the white person in the couple here, is that no one needs to start saying that this is about R&B artists or about hip hop or about the culture of that type of music, because as white people too, and though we may not have a documentary yet about a white musician doing it, it's out there. But we do have people that we know about, like John Lasseter or about Harvey Weinstein, and I'm sure there will be one, but we can't put these people in different categories and start thinking that, oh, it's just hip-hop culture that does this. It may be right there in the music a lot of times, in the lyrics, which is often unfortunate, and that's a whole nother conversation. But I think, we just need to remember it's not one group that's doing this, because people have already started to categorize this as one culture. And I think there are three words. And when I talked before about doing your research, critical race theory, and go out there and look up some articles and look up some research. And there's a lot of stuff that people don't want to hear and don't want to talk about. But, it's stuff that should be spoken of. And you should always try and educate yourself and get a well-rounded picture of not only assumptions that people make about each other, but about the historical reasons for why people are where they are. But that's an even larger view of this. I think we just need to remember it's not just R. Kelly. And we have all been complicit in forgiving this in the entertainment industry for a long time, which is why Me Too is such a big change, because it's not just addressing individuals, it's addressing systems. And that's the big problem, is we tend to address what's on the surface and individuals, and we ignore the systematic problems that are often ignored because they're profitable or because they're beneficial to someone. And so I think that's what we need to remember here in this conversation.
So heavy episode all around. Gandhi, critical race theory.
Well, and also talking about the things that we tend to ignore. I think what people also need to understand about Gandhi is that he wasn't just a simple, quiet man who pushed back by not eating. He was shrewd, smart, cunning.
A lawyer.
He was a lawyer. And when he he was the smartest man in the room much of the time. And he would convince people to do something while making them think it was their idea. And the way he could manipulate and move people and governments, and then just by sheer force of will, not eating for a period and basically saying, hey, if y'all don't stop what you're doing, you're going to kill me by my choice, but you're still complicit in this. The way he could work people's minds that way and work their emotions is pretty fascinating. And again, it shows much more of who he was. Now, how he would often be described in the media of the time, particularly the British media, as little bald brown man and things like that. In fact, that was one of the things that Richard Attenborough, as he was trying to get the film made, one of the studio executives at Fox, I think it was, and I need to make sure I'm right on that, but a studio executive said to him, who wants to see a movie about a little bald brown man carrying a beanpole? And what Attenborough said is, after the 8 Oscars, he said, I want to go find that guy and say, fuck you.
Yeah, it's serious. I don't know. I really think that to not see this film in your lifetime is probably a tragedy. I think that's maybe, it's probably in my top 10 movies that I will consistently rewatch all over again. Every time I see it, I walk away with something different. I don't know. Maybe it's because I saw it in my 20s and now I'm just forever linked back into a different time. But really, whenever I look at it, it really is just self-reflective. It makes me self-reflective. It's extremely insightful. And it's a reminder really to be mindful of others. And it brings me back to a place where I haven't had that mindfulness in the last couple of years, not in the same way.
And for you Harry Potter fans, it has Vernon Dursley in it as well, in a very small role.
Thanks for that trivializing trivia.
Yes.
All right.
No,
on that Harry Potter note,
I did want to ask you though, is why did you want to show this to me?
Really? I think I just answered that like 10 billion times.
I think so. I know you have very personal reasons, but maybe is there a scene that you really wanted me to see? Was there one moment in there where you're like,
No,
really, you're gonna love this?
It's the whole movie. And your reaction was pretty much, your reaction only confirmed how I feel that I felt every time that I watched it. And what I mean by that is that you were just so awestruck and into it. And we took a break in the middle of it for a little bit. And we went back and we rewatched it. But it's like the intensity and what you were feeling and what you were seeing. And the fact that you did, were just walking away from it. And it was hard to walk away from. It really just confirmed everything that I thought about this movie. And the impact that it has had on my life, and just reaffirmed the fact that it was warranted to have this impact in my life, if that makes sense.
Yes, no, absolutely. Absolutely. And I think it was because not only was it a great whole, but it was full of these great moments. And though some of them may have been slightly fictionalized to make for a better film, there were just they were truly great moments. And one of my favorites was when he sort of calls his own punishment. It's like calling his own pitch, like he puts out, his finger, like, I'll take the fastball. It is the moment where he's in court and he says, well, you're just going to have to give me the maximum penalty. The judge doesn't want to do what he's doing, but he won't plead innocent. Gandhi is basically, yeah, I'm guilty of all these things that you're saying I do. That's what I'm doing. And he's like, well, I don't know what to do. And he's like, well, you're just going to have to give me the maximum. So I thought that showed that he wasn't meek. He may have been quiet sometimes and humble, but that he was not at all meek. And in that moment where he's like, sure, send me to jail. I'm comfortable there. I've been there a few times. Let's go back. Was a moment where I felt the film shifted. And it was a breaking point in the film. It was kind of moving into that next section, but I thought that one really summed up a lot of it for me in filling out more of who this man was than the image that many of us have before we go into that.
All right. Anything else you want to share on Gandhi? Oh, I did want to share something. So on our blog, I'm going to actually put this up because this might be the only humorous portion, other than me ragging on my husband, interrupting me a bajillion times, that we're going to get. And it is a TV. So I really love this TV trope site. We've used it before. I forget, was it Princess Bride that we used the TV tropes for?
I think we've used it on a couple.
Golden Child. Golden Child we used the TV tropes for.
We touched on it in Christine, too.
Did we? No, but this tvtropes.org really did a really great site. And they do it for Gandhi. And I'm like, what tropes are in there? And literally my favorite trope that they list is bald of awesome. And then they go, then they define it as Gandhi himself. So yeah, there's a couple of things there, like grin of audacity. Gandhi is good at this, although it's a cute smile rather than a grin. And high class glass. That's Muhammad Jinnah. There's so much stuff. Interfaith smoothie. Yeah, ironic echo. The mean Brit. So thank you, TV Tropes, for making me smile about Gandhi, because it's such a heavy topic in general and just a heavy movie, but really great and self-reflective all at the same time.
Well, and I think that it says a lot, too, about resistance, which I think everyone needs to be thinking about at this point, because it's so easy, as we were talking about with that quote, to just kind of give up. And there are things she says in here, like the function of a civil resistance is to provoke response. And I think what is important for us to watch about him and any other civil resistors who use nonviolence is how infuriating they are to the oppressor, because they won't fight back. And that's what they want, is they want to start that struggle so they can destroy them and look good about it, like they were justified.
It's not that they won't fight back. It's that there's an activeness within the resistance.
Yes.
It's not passive.
Right.
So it's, okay, we're going to march on this. We're going to go ahead and do that. We're going to do this. We're going to boycott that. Like, there's an active resistance to it. So it's not just civil disobedience and you're just stayed and you don't do anything. It's an active resistance without violence.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah. And
so
that
it's a
is
non-violent resistance, an active non-violent resistance.
right. You're right. It's not just sitting there doing nothing.
Right.
It is being very active, but it's not fighting necessarily. Well, it's fighting of a different type.
Right. Anything else? Otherwise, I'm going to wrap it up. This is your chance. Oh boy, he's sighing. Everybody, let's all wait we're all on weighted breath now for Parry to come up with something highly intelligent. This is insert the Jeopardy tune. Going over pages of notes. And then we're going to turn this off and he's going to come up with about 10 things that he really wanted to say and didn't have a chance to say it. And then he's going to insert it in a different podcast like he did today with that damn chorus line bit. That had nothing to do with anything.
I thought that was rather brilliant myself.
No, it's not brilliant. I saw that shit right away as soon as you started saying it. I was like, chorus line, Richard, really? No.
I think
crap.
Tying our different films together is...
That's crap. Yeah, you can type by director. What? Oh, what? Oh, nothing. Oh.
I will end on a line that I wrote that I think sums up the whole thing. Is the film is as restrained as the man himself,
and definitely does not describe you.
Wow.
So please rate, review, and subscribe to our podcast. Check out our website, youhaven'tseenwhatmovie.com. I'm going to go ahead and put that link to the TV tropes up there. Or if I forget, Parry will put up the link to the TV tropes section.
Yeah, I think I accidentally erased it off of the one from Golden Child, so I need to put it back up there.
Bullshit. So. Check out our social media, Instagram, Facebook, Twitter at You Haven't Seen What Movie, and let us know any feedback that you might have, or don't let us know. That's okay too. But either way, we hope that you are enjoying listening to our ramblings. And we're going to have, I think for the next 2 movies, we're going to have literally couple's choice, only because it's birthday choice. And we have 2 birthdays on the same day. So I think we're going to make you listen to UHF and Clue. So yeah, check and wait for those episodes, hopefully released by the end of January, beginning of February, at some point, sometime.
Yes, they will be done.
They will be done. It has so been ordered. So remember,
be kind.
Rewind.
Bye.
Bye.
You know what? I think the book I was looking for was Midnight Furies, I think was the one about
Why are you
the
talking
Great
about
Divide
Furies
between...
again? Furies?
No, Firies.
Firies?
This was the one about...
no underground love?
Indian partition. So, no, this has nothing to do with Bowie.
Bowie?
I know everything has to do with Bowie, but not in this case.
He's a Brit.
So.
That's how I'm linking it together with Gandhi.
You know who did have a cameo in this movie?
Richard Attenborough.
Daniel Day-Lewis has his first role
in this movie.
Who also later worked with Spielberg.
Sucker.
So, in Lincoln, of course, and
we're adding more. We're done. Yeah. We've said be kind, please rewind. The done.
Yep, and Roshan Seth, who played Nehru.
Boy, this is what happens.
He was in Temple of Doom.
Great.
So, yeah.
Thank you. Any more awesome trivia that we should have inserted within the actual episode?
There's plenty. So let me get started with...
No.
You're a temptress.
Just an admirer.
Nothing's more dangerous.